Hey everyone, and welcome to the 5 Bytes podcast. I'm your host, Rory Monahan. And now let's dive into the highlights from this week's enterprise IT news. Bleepycomputer.com has reported that Microsoft is investigating a bug that causes Copilot to summarize confidential emails, ignoring the fact that they've been marked as confidential by the user and essentially not respecting boundaries set by customers. It said that, quote, a code issue is allowing items in the sent items and draft folders to be picked up by Copilot, even though confidential labels are set in place, end quote. The good news here is that Microsoft has already started to roll out a fix, but they have not provided a final timeline for full remediation and has not disclosed how many users or organizations were affected, saying only that the scope of the impact may change as the investigation continues. So that's a pretty big whoopsie and could be a potential data privacy violation as well, I'd imagine. So it'll be interesting to see if this gets harpooned on by some of the regulators. So I recorded this episode on Tuesday night, February 24th, but on Monday, February 23rd, IBM shares had their worst day in more than 25 years after the AI startup Anthropic said its Claude code tool can help modernize COBOL, a dated program language that's run on IBM computers. And now, honestly, I've seen this use case for Claude, I think almost 2 years ago now, but it seems to have possibly like caught fire, and investors are savvy to the fact that it seems to be getting a better success rate when it comes to converting the code. And as a result, the stock plunged 13% in its biggest single day percentage loss since October 2000. And with that decline, IBM's shares had fallen 27% in February overall, on track for its biggest 1 month slide since at least 1968, according to data compiled by Bloomberg. Now, I should say, usually it takes 2 or 3 nights for me to get the episode recorded, edited, and published. So it's possible that the stock price increased since then. But at the time of this recording, this is what the information was. And it said that Claude's ability to potentially automate the migration away from COBOL is clearly being viewed as a major threat to IBM's bottom line. COBOL is reportedly still widely relied upon in many systems, such as bank ATMs. So, time for IBM to diversify their portfolio and find another way to make up for that lost revenue. Frankly, COBOL's been on the outs for years. The problem with it is that most of the people who had experience with the language have been retiring in recent years. So this has been seen as a major blind spot in organizations and a problem. And AI is providing a path forward, but that seemingly can hit IBM's bottom line. So a problem for IBM, but probably a good thing for organizations to not be reliant on it anymore. Usually, I save most of the AI related stories for toward the end of the episodes just because there's like an oversaturation of AI stories every week. But it seems like we're at a pivotal moment in AI. There's all these kind of warning signals of AI kind of reaching this point now where it's potentially going to start taking a lot of jobs. And The Guardian recently published a piece examining how AI is likely to reshape white collar work over the coming years. They gave examples of like a young fella who left college with a computer science degree but had difficulty landing a job and then decided to aim for a career change to nursing. The man in question went for like a data center technician role, and upon not landing the job, he turned to nursing, thinking that like it's a more practical, hands-on type of job that's less likely to be lost to AI. And The Guardian suggests that he's not alone, as others are also reassessing career paths. Jobs that emphasize interpersonal and hands on skills are increasingly appealing to young people, apparently, who are wary of automation. And this is according to Dr. Jasmine Escalera, a career development expert at Zeti, which is a professional development platform. She pointed to research showing that 43% of Gen Z workers who are anxious about AI are moving away from entry level corporate and administrative roles and toward careers that rely on what she calls human skills, including creativity, interpersonal connection, and hands on expertise. In the same report, it showed 53% of young respondents claimed they were seriously considering blue collar or skilled trade work. The World Economic Forum, that was on a few weeks ago, projects that AI could displace 92 million roles worldwide by 2030, including many white collar positions. In the US, employers cited AI as a factor in nearly 55,000 job cuts in 2025. While AI is still just one factor among many that are leading to layoffs, ADP, the largest payroll company in the United States, found that professional and business service roles alongside information services jobs in media, telecom, and IT collectively lost 41,000 jobs in just December of last year alone. And in that same month, employment grew in healthcare, education, and hospitality, per the firm's data. Liam Robinson, a 45-year-old animation artist that was covered in this report by The Guardian, said that he was actively avoiding jobs in the mobile gaming industry that he's worked in for more than a decade. In his last role as an art director, he says his employer encouraged staff to use generative AI to speed up production. Robinson, who refused to use AI in his own work, said he watched the quality of animation suffer around him as his colleagues began relying on the tech. And then last December, after disclosing in a self evaluation survey that he was not using AI, Robinson was laid off. It left him disillusioned with the direction of the industry, and he believes AI flattens creativity, erodes craftsmanship, and hurts the environment, fueling his resistance to work for companies building or deploying it. That is really interesting on the animation front because I saw a trailer for some kids movie that's coming out, and I think it might have been Pixar. It looked very similar animation style to other animated films I've seen in the past, but something seemed a little bit off about it. Like it was very close, but something just didn't seem as, I don't know, crisp or detailed or something like that. And I was wondering if AI was involved. And I would think that's an area where AI would be used quite a bit. You know, animation, where, you know, the recognizable part of that, you know, there's a style, but, you know, that's a style that could be emulated by AI. But getting like voice actors is probably the main draw of some of these Pixar movies. They get recognizable people to do the voices and promote the movies. So, I mean, they could use AI for the animated films, but then on the actual live action films, I don't know if people are going to be all that welcoming of AI. Like those deep fakes are pretty convincing. There was recently one that went viral where I think it was Brad Pitt and maybe Tom Cruise fighting on a rooftop or something like that. It looked pretty convincing. Again, still a little bit off, but I don't know if that's going to be as welcomed as maybe animation that's AI generated and then voiced over by an actual human. I guess we'll have to wait and see. I will say, if anyone is looking for a job, New Messant, my employer and former show sponsor, is hiring. I'm not entirely sure of the roles. I'm on, again, heavy medication. I keep saying it, but I heard about it just last week at our company meetup. We are hiring for some roles, I believe, in Europe and the United States, which is funny because we do have AI features within our product, but maybe we're sized at a point where we're in growth. So we still need more people regardless of utilizing AI. So it's a very interesting dichotomy between companies and um, the direction of travel for maybe large companies versus smaller companies and how AI may impact roles within companies of various sizes, industries, etc. NeoN.net has reported that Edge's built-in password manager that lets you secure passwords and autofill with two security options, currently in Windows Hello or a standalone password, is set to change. The latter, which is the standalone password, is now on its way out, as Microsoft has decided to discontinue the primary password in favor of the device sign-in or Windows Hello option. Starting with Edge version 146, users will no longer have the ability to create a custom primary password. However, the feature will remain available for existing users for a couple of additional months. On June 4th, Microsoft will pull the plug for existing users and switch them to device authentication. While the change may sound inconvenient for those who use a custom password to protect personal data in Microsoft Edge, A device-wide authentication is reportedly a much better connection is reportedly a better option according to neowin.net, considering that custom passwords are non-recoverable. Therefore, if you forget your password, the only way out is to delete the entire profile. Additionally, using device-wide authentication lets you use biometric sign-in with your face or fingerprint, which is safer and more convenient. Yes, I agree, but device sign on Windows or Windows Hello does tie you into Microsoft for the password manager. So if you're using Edge, perhaps across different platforms, maybe you don't want to be reliant on that other Microsoft dependency. But um, eh, I don't know. I guess if you're concerned about it, there's other password managers on the market. Newwin also reported that a duo of new Windows 11 builds is now rolling out to Windows insiders in the dev and beta channels. This is build 26300.7877, and it's out for Windows insiders in the dev channel, while build 26220.7872 is available in the beta channel. Upon reviewing the changelog, I don't see too much to get excited about. So, for example, now when you right click on an exe, a bat, or a CMD file, the context menus open will now match the icon associated with that file. I mean, it's a nice little detail to have, but nothing too exciting. And I didn't see anything else in there that's all that exciting to me. Hey, but I'll share a link to this article if you'd like to check it out for yourself. You'll find that at 5bytespodcast.com with episode 248. Maybe there's something in there that you'll be excited by. Newwin also reported that kernel extensions for 3 new devices discovered in macOS version 26.3, identified by code names J700, J427, and J527, could be a nod toward new devices that are set to be announced next week by Apple. J700, for example, is believed to be the code name for Apple's low-cost MacBook, which is reportedly powered by the A18 Pro chip. The device is expected to cost under $1,000, and they think at launch will have vibrant colors, and it's going to be aimed at students and first-time Mac buyers looking for an affordable option. Apple confirmed that it will hold an event on March 4th to introduce new devices, so we should find out soon if this is correct. The University of Mississippi Medical Center, which don't be fooled by the name university, this is a clinic. They closed all their clinic locations statewide in Mississippi on Thursday last week following a ransomware attack. UMMC has over 10,000 employees, and as one of the largest employers in Mississippi, it operates 7 hospitals, 35 clinics, and more than 200 telehealth sites statewide. The medical center includes the state's only children's hospital, only level 1 trauma center, only organ and bone marrow transplant program, and the only telehealth center of excellence, one of 2 across the United States. The cyber attack reportedly took down many of its IT systems and blocked access to their EPIC system, which is for the electronic medical records. While UMMC canceled outpatient and ambulatory surgeries, procedures, and imaging appointments, officials said hospital services continue via downtime procedures, which those downtime procedures, having experience in healthcare, that sucks. It sucks for all the staff, clinical staff, and everyone. The hospital is working reportedly with the assistance from U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, and the FBI. Another case of healthcare being attacked. There's ramblings that this could be elevated in terms of crimes in the near future, and personally, I think it should be. Sleepycomputer.com has reported that hackers are actively exploiting CVE-2026-1731, which is a vulnerability I reported on previously on the podcast last week, which has to do with BeyondTrust's remote support product. The security issue affects BeyondTrust's remote support 25.3.1 or earlier and privileged remote access version 24.34 or earlier, and can be exploited for remote code execution. I won't dive into this vulnerability any further on this episode, but I suggest you check out episode 426 on 5bytespodcast.com for more information. A Ukrainian national was sentenced to 5 years in prison for providing North Korean IT workers with stolen identities that helped them infiltrate U.S. companies, according to BleepingComputer.com. He reportedly stole the identities of hundreds of people, including US citizens, which were used by North Korea to fraudulently secure lucrative IT jobs. He provided the North Korean remote workers with at least 871 proxy identities and proxy accounts on three freelance IT hiring platforms. He also facilitated the operation of at least 8 laptop farms in Virginia, Tennessee, California, Florida, Ecuador, Poland, and the Ukraine, and that allowed North Koreans to make it look like their devices were located in the US. One of these laptop farms was run by Christina Marie Chapman, who is a 50-year-old woman from Arizona, and she was running this farm from her home between October 2020 and October 2023, and she was charged in May of 2024 and was sentenced to 102 months in prison after a July 2025 guilty plea. And I covered that story on the podcast back in 2024, I believe, too. A Spanish court has granted precautionary measures against NordVPN and ProtonVPN, ordering both VPN providers to block 16 websites that facilitate piracy of football matches. The restrictions will apply to a dynamic list of IP addresses in Spain, and there will be no opportunity for appeals. The defendants in this case, both providers, were not called to participate in the hearing. La Liga, the country's premier league within football, and its broadcasting partner Telefonica are required to preserve sufficient digital evidence of the unlawful transmission of the protected contents. La Liga categorized the ruling as unprecedented in Spain, aligning it with similar decisions in France, and celebrated that the liability of VPN providers for piracy is clearly recognized. In response to this ruling, ProtonVPN took to Twitter to question the decision, declaring a total lack of awareness of the proceedings and stating that they have not been formally notified. They said, quote, "Any judicial order issued without proper notification to the affected parties, thereby denying them the opportunity to be heard, would be procedurally invalid under fundamental principles of due process. Spanish courts, like all courts operating under the rule of law, are bound by procedural safeguards that ensure parties are given a fair opportunity to present their case before any binding judgment is rendered." End quote. For their part, NordVPN said, quote, "At this stage, we have not received the judicial documents mentioned in the press, so it will be premature to comment without having reviewed them. We were not part of any Spanish judicial proceedings to our knowledge, and therefore had no opportunity to defend ourselves. Given such judgments' impact on how the internet operates, such an approach by rights holders is unacceptable." End quote. While I agree with the actions of forcing them to block these sites and protecting La Liga or anyone who wants that kind of protection, I also agree with the VPN providers that they should have been able to actually, state their case. But now this episode's scripts, tricks, and tips. First up, on LinkedIn, I saw a quick tip if you're using Claude Code, and it's to try running /output-style and switching it to explanatory. Instead of just dumping code at you, it actually explains the reasoning behind codes. I won't explain the rest of it, but I do suggest you check out this tip if you're using Claude Code, because it is kind of cool to not just get the code, but also have an explanation as to why it makes sense. And I'll share a link with this episode, which again is episode 248. I also saw an article on appleinsider.com with tips to prevent Google from skimming your emails with its AI. So there's an option to turn off some of the smart tools. Now you do lose some of the features like the smart, categorization of emails into like promotions and updates, etc. But it does seem to, prevent Google from skimming your emails, although who really knows? Over on xda-developers.com, I saw a good article on understanding Docker Compose with a lot of CLI examples. So this is a really good walkthrough because it does provide examples to learn from. And finally, one that I want to try out, I saw that there's a GitHub repository for an open source project for cloning voices and generating speech using voice-powered applications that runs AI locally on your machine to clone the voice. I don't know if people could tell from the audio of this episode, but I'm sick once again, and I'm sick with a neck injury, which doubly sucks. I really could have done with not recording this week, So if I could potentially at least use AI for the clone voice for weeks that I'm under the weather, it would be a great help. I don't know about fully flipping and using it for all episodes. I feel like that might be um, dishonest. I mean, if it's good enough, maybe, but still, it would be a little bit dishonest. But hey, if I'm not charging for episodes, maybe that is the way I go. Otherwise, maybe I do need to do Patreon or something like that because this podcast takes a lot of time. But that's neither here nor there. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and I'll catch you next week.